Hey, friends, welcome to another broadcast of Wellness Wednesdays. I'm glad that you're here tonight. We're going to have an awesome conversation on tonight. Before I jump into that, I want to introduce myself. If this is your first time here, my name is James Perkins. I'm a counselor and a coach, and I'm really glad that you're here with me on tonight. So, as you come on in, do two things for me. One, let me know where you're chiming in from, city and state. If this is your first time, put one in the comments for me so I can make sure to connect with you. And then if this is your second time or more, just put two, or you can put hashtag OG, whichever one you feel more comfortable with. But I'm glad that you're here with me tonight. I'm excited about our conversation on tonight. Let me share from my end, make sure I'm good on my end. Awesome. Awesome. This is Wellness Wednesdays. We do this every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And really, the reason that I do this every week is because I think our mental and emotional wellness is really connected to uh, essentially each and every decision that we make. And if I can help people better understand how our thoughts and emotions impact our decisions, um, and our decisions, inevitably impact our future, then I'm doing a good job if I'm helping people to really consider um, how they can shift their perspective or expand their perspective about what they think is possible for their life and future. So I'm glad that you're here with me tonight. I'm going to give a couple more people to jump on. Time to do that. But again, as you're coming on the end on tonight, let me know where you're chiming in from, city and state, and love to greet you. And so tonight, um, the topic of our discussion is how our family of origin shows up in our life and leadership. I know it's a big topic to be tackling, and really, we probably could spend several weeks just talking about how our family of origin impacts our life and leadership. And what I mean by leadership is, you may, before you try to tune me out, we should listen up very closely that, the reality is that we're all leading somebody somewhere at some time. And so leadership is just not a position title, but it really is influence. And whatever role that you find yourself in, whether you're a brother or sister, whether you're a leader at a church, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you're a mother, the reality is that you have influence. And people are making decisions about what to do. They are forming their perception about who they are by what they see you doing, what they don't see you doing, what you're saying, what they don't hear you saying. And so the reality is that there is no place that your leadership does not have an impact on. And so I'm glad to be having this conversation on tonight. Excuse me. So tonight, what I want to first begin with is really telling you why I think this is really important conversation for us to have. Um, Two realities I think that are really important to discuss is that one, the things that often have the most impact on us are the things that often are most unconscious. I want to stop and pause there. I know that was a big statement to make. But the things that have the most impact on us are often the things that are mostly unconscious to us. And in part, this is a deal because um, the way our brains are set up for efficiency. And so our brain, um, it takes what we say to ourselves in words, pictures, and images over a period of time, and it hardwires that information into our subconscious so that we're not always walking around thinking about these types of things. The way I can explain it is imagine if you have a computer, right? You never have all of your tabs up at any moment of the day. Now, you may have five tabs, you may have 10. If you're really excessive, you may have 30 tabs up at once on your computer, but you don't have every file in your computer open um, because that would crash your computer. That's the same way our brain works. It doesn't have all of our memories, all of our experiences, all accessible to us in our conscious at any given moment. Because if it was set up that way, our brains would crash. We wouldn't be able to do anything. We wouldn't be able to function. And so what our brain does is that whatever we say to ourselves, whatever we have been saying to ourselves from the time that we're born into this present moment, it's taken those things, those words, those images, um, those pictures, those words, pictures, and statements that we've been saying to ourselves. So sometimes people think, man, if I'm not saying it, then it's not really getting inside of my subconscious. That's untrue. Your brain is interpreting and hardwiring whatever you say to yourself. If you're thinking about certain words about yourself, you're thinking about certain images, and then making certain statements to yourself. So it doesn't have to be verbally that you're saying them out loud, but you're saying these things to yourself inside of your head. It takes that information and it hardwires into your subconscious. And so, how this really impacts you, to really show you how this impacts you, is that research shows that 85% of our daily habits, our daily routine, is based off our subconscious. So each and every day that you get up, you're making decisions about how you're going to interact, how you're going to live your life based off what's already been hardwired in your subconscious, what you've been saying to yourself in word, pictures, and images over a period of time. That all the information has been hardwired, so you're making decisions based off of that material. Now, see, this is why I think it's really important. Why I love the Proverbs, um, specifically, I think it's Proverbs 27, because it says that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So what that essentially is saying is that we will never, that whatever shows up in our mind, whatever we focus on, we inevitably become. What we focus on over a period of time, we inevitably work that out into our everyday life. And so, both positive and negative. So, this is the good thing I love about it, and why I think us reading the Bible is really important, because it's just not about scripture memory. It's just not about memorizing scripture for the purpose of doing that. But when we interpret, when we internalize, I believe the Word of God, which is inerrant, it's infallible, and it has power beyond what we can comprehend. When we internalize those words have the power to change and transform our life. And so, how I bring this around to our family of origin is that most of what we believe started really early in our life. What we believe about a variety of different topics as it relates to relationships, as it relates to conflict, as it relates to what we believe about ourselves and others and God. All those things were formed through our family of origin. And what I define family of origin is simply as uh, the primary caregivers that you are raised under. And so, what I want to do is add a caveat to this before I go any further. And I want to say that I'm not coming for your family tonight. That is not my intent. But what I do want to offer for you to consider is that the reality that none of us ever leave our families of origin unscathed. What I mean by that is none of us ever leave our family of origins unaffected. Yeah, yeah. None of us ever leave our families of origin unaffected. So if you're coming in for the first time, or if this is your repeat time, I would love for you to just chime in. Let me know where you're chiming in, city and state from. My name is James Perkins, and I'm glad that you're here with me on tonight. Yeah, that you're here with me on tonight. And so, as I was saying, none of us ever leave our families of origin unscathed. We're all impacted to some degree by our family of origin. As I always say to my clients and remind people, even in common conversation, is that, you know, to a certain extent, every family is dysfunctional. Every family is dysfunctional to a certain extent. You may be on the mild side of dysfunction, or you may be on the extreme side of dysfunction. But the reality is, we grew up in some form of dysfunction to a certain degree. And how do I know that? I know that because none of us are perfect. Even the best parents with the best intentions um, impact their kids and children, if you will, interpret their experiences with their primary caregivers, their mother and father, sometimes not always in the best light. And there's nothing that we can do to control that. And a part of the reason it is that way is because when we are young, um, we don't have the intellectual capabilities to critically reason at a certain age and to determine that something that my parents may say to me or something that I may observe and internalize is completely accurate. We just know that what people say to us, what our parents say to us, and those early life experiences that happen to us, that we're internalizing them, and we don't always have a filter built up to be able to reject things that are not in alignment with the best, most authentic version of the people that we want to become. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. And so our families of origin have a significant impact on how we are showing up in our present everyday life, but also how we are showing up in the places that we lead and have influence with. And again, this is a reality because we're just not always, nobody's sitting around thinking about, man, how did my family of origin, how did my parents set me up um, to interact in a certain way? Nobody's going to bed at night thinking about, man, how's my family of origin impacting my everyday decisions right now? Nobody's doing that. But we're making decisions and largely or in part as a result of those early experiences, whether we are consciously aware of it or not. So, what I want to share with you first off is that we all have a central message, if you will, or a central story that we operate our life around. And this story is often developed in response to our interactions with our primary caregivers early on. And so, whatever that central message that we internalize, um, that becomes the central thread through which we filter our life through and make decisions through. And so, what I want to share with you guys tonight are really two types of messages that I think that are really important to pay attention to. One are the unconscious childhood messages. These are the messages that we received from our parents. And these are the messages that we internalize from our experience with our primary caregivers, whether it was a mother or our father, or perhaps our grandparents may have raised us, whoever our primary caregivers were. We internalize this message, and this message we internalize because we needed it to survive. I want you to pay attention to it tonight. We internalize this specific message because we needed that message to survive and to move forward and to interact and to navigate our life. And so what I want to share with you are these messages that I think it's, you may identify with one, you may identify with several, but one of them may stick out to you the more. These messages are that it's not okay to make mistakes. I want to list them out, excuse me, and then highlight a few. So one message you may have received through your family of origin is that it's not okay to make mistakes. That it's not okay to make mistakes. I don't even have my mic over here, so hopefully you guys have been hearing me good this whole time. That it's not okay to make mistakes. Or the message you may have received is that it's not okay to have your own needs. Yeah, it's not okay to have your own needs. Possibly your message may have been it's not okay to have your own feelings and identity. It's not okay for you to have your own feelings and identity. Or perhaps it's not okay for you to be too happy in the world. Or it's not okay for you to be comfortable in the world. or it's not okay for you to trust yourself, or it's not okay for you to depend on anyone for anything, or it's not okay for you to be vulnerable or to trust anyone, or it's not okay for you to assert yourself. So what happens is one or several of these messages end up becoming the central thing, the central narrative through which you interpret your life. And what I really mean by narrative is the story that you operate on, because we're all operating on a story that is either leading us towards our goals, accomplishments, dreams. Um, it's leading us or giving us a sense of fulfillment and empowering us, or we are living in a story that holds us back, that limits us. And so, what I find really important for us to understand, and why I think this topic is so really important for us to talk about tonight, is that we're just not consciously aware of sometimes how these messages are impacting our everyday life experience. And so, for instance, if I were to just using that it's not okay to make mistakes, if that's the central thread through which you interpret your life experience, then what happens is that you don't end up showing yourself compassion. You don't end up showing yourself compassion. And because you don't show yourself compassion, you always have to be perfect. And it can be, man, a really, really hard time to live under the story that it's not okay to make mistakes and to live your life in a way where you have to be perfect all the time. No one can live under that pressure. And so that impacts how you lead your team, how you interact with others. It may be sometimes hard for you to admit that you've made a mistake, sometimes to people, but sometimes it's even hard to admit that you made a mistake to yourself because you're not giving yourself room to to have um, to have space for error, if you will. So what happens is that these messages end up becoming again the central thread through which we interpret our life experiences. Uh, these central messages become the way that we make decisions about what we believe is possible for our life, what we think we are capable of doing, of achieving, of having. And when these messages, these messages are really set up to help us survive, but not help us thrive. So these messages that I just went over with you, these messages are meant to help us survive, but they're not set up to help us thrive. No one can live their life and thrive, if you will, living under the story that it's not okay to make mistakes. That it's not okay to make mistakes. So the question that I want to ask you on tonight, one of the questions rather, that I want to ask you tonight is, what if the story that you're living in is not true? I want to give you a moment to let that sink in. I'm going to say it again. What if the story that you are living in is not true? What if the story that you are living in is not true? What does that mean for you? What does that mean for you? So the other reality that I think is interesting about us as humans, as mammals, if you will, is that we're the only creatures with the capacity for storytelling. It's very interesting, I know. We are the only creatures with the capacity for storytelling. So what that means is, out of all the creation, out of all the people, out of all of God's creation, we are the only ones that have the capacity to change our story at any given moment. Every other creature on the face of the world operates off an instinct. So they operate based off how God designed them to interact, to to interact and act. Probably mix those up. And so humans, on the other hand, we have the capacity to change our stories. We have the capacity to change the direction of our life by changing our story. Now, our family of origin has a lot to do with this because um, one of the realities or one of the things that you'll have learned in my experience as a counselor and learned even just through graduate school is that we are only earlier on able to make sense of our story, of our narrative, to the degree that our parents, our primary caregivers, have made sense of their story. I want you guys to catch that. That what helps us to make sense of who we are in our identity at our core, what helps us to make sense about what's possible for us is directly tied to how our parents have made clear or have come have gotten clarity about who they are. Man, that's really powerful, guys. That is gold. If I got off the broadcast tonight, that would be worth it. Just to show you that your story, you making sense of your story, is directly tied to your parents' ability to make sense of their story. The other aspect of our families of origin that impact us is the the ability for us to be seen and to be heard. We are all biologically wired for love and belonging, and one of the most fundamental needs that we have is the need to be seen and to be heard. The need for someone to ask us questions, to engage our life in such a way that it causes us to think about what is it that matters to me? What is the purpose of my life? When we have this experience of someone asking us these questions that allow us to be seen and to be heard, what then that allows us to do is to ask even more reflective questions about what is going on in our life. So what that does is that sets us up to consider, man, how is it that the way I'm processing my life in this moment is impacting my decisions? How is it that the way I'm processing my life in this moment is impacting who I pursue in a relationship or how I respond in relationships? When we have this ability, or when we have been raised in environments that have given us the opportunity to be seen and to be heard, this gives us the ability to make sense of who we are. But for a large part, to be honest with you, we don't often have this experience, just to be honest with you. Yeah, yeah. For a lot of us, we don't have this experience. I had very caring, I had very loving parents. I had present, physically present parents, and but not always emotionally present parents. And those are two different things. I hope I'm not getting anybody in trouble tonight, but I want to share my story, be transparent, because again, like I said, we all don't leave our families of origin. We all leave our families of origin with some amount of impact, some amount of residue that we carry on. And so, one of the important experiences that I've had, and I think what drove me to counseling, is just my own experience of discovering what it's like to be seen and to know, and to want to offer that to others. Um, what I think is important for you to realize right now is that what you don't, what you are not aware of, has a direct proportion to how you interact with others and how you form beliefs about yourself and how you form beliefs about what's possible for your life. This is why I think it's really important for us to talk about this, because man, if one, if we have kids, even if we don't have kids, we don't want to continue operating in a story that holds us back from pursuing God's best for our life. We don't want to hold on to a story that incarcerates us and holds us hostage and does not empower us to actually pursue our mission and vision in life. So some of the reasons that it's really hard for us to make decisions, some of the reasons that it's really hard for us to move forward in life is not necessarily because of what's going on around us as much as it is what's going on inside of us, the story that we're operating on. And if we can connect with the story that is driving the narrative of our life, then we have a chance to change it. And so share with you the unconscious messages that we internalize in response to our primary experience with our primary caregivers. What I want to share with you are some messages that you needed to hear, but you probably didn't. Some messages that you needed to hear, but you probably didn't. I'm just going to name them out to you, and one of them may resonate with you more than the other. That's okay. Whatever message resonates with you the most, I want you to do me a favor, be vulnerable, and drop it in the chat. So the message that you probably most needed to hear, but that you didn't hear growing up may have been, you are good, or that you are wanted, or that you are loved for being yourself, or that you are seen for who you are, or that your needs are not a problem, or that you are safe, or that you will be taken care of, or that you will not be betrayed, or that your presence matters. Man, those are some powerful statements. I guarantee you, if all of us would have heard the statements that we needed to hear earlier on, to some degree, our life probably would have been different. But that's why I'm here tonight. This is why you're here with James Perkins, the counselor, is because you want to help change that. And so if you do, shameless plug, make sure you schedule a session with me at jamesperkins.help. Go to Talk with James. Click Discovery Call if you want to talk, have a conversation with me. We can figure out if we're the best fit for each other, and we can have a conversation. Okay, back to the broadcast. You like how I did that, didn't you? Yeah. So when we internalize, when we are hearing the messages that we need to hear, what that gives us the ability to do is start to change the narrative, change our story, so that we then can open ourselves up to having and receiving what it is best for us. So there's this thing in the back of our brain, on the back of our brainstem, called the reticular activating system. And so the job of this specific part of our brain is to filter out any information that is not in alignment with our core beliefs about who we are. Its whole entire job is to filter out anything that's not in alignment with what we already believe about ourselves. So I want to give you an example of this. The way this works is, have you ever been searching for a vehicle online, a specific vehicle that you wanted to purchase, that you wanted to buy, and when you went to get on the road and start driving, you started seeing that car everywhere? You started seeing that car everywhere. If that's been your experience, give me a thumbs up. Let me know that I'm hitting on something. I know. Look, I'm not the only one that's been looking for a vehicle and has had that experience. Yep. Okay. I see you. You guys are chiming with me. And so the reason that you were paying attention to these cars now is because of that part of your brain, the reticular activating system, because you were continuously searching for a specific type of car. Your brain was starting, when it got on the road, it was filtering out any car that wasn't like that one, or you just started to see it. Now, the funny thing about this is that these cars were probably already on the road the whole time, but because of what you had been viewing consistently over a period of time, that is what you were paying attention to when you start driving on the road. This is the same way our beliefs work. So whatever beliefs that we've hardwired into our subconscious, when we have experiences, when we're interacting with people, what happens is that if those beliefs are not in alignment with who we are, we filter those things out, and we only accept the experiences that reinforce what we're already believe. And so, for instance, if you are attempting to start a new business and the message that you have been saying to yourself is internally, you may not have said it vocally, but you may have been saying this to yourself, is this is not going to work, or I can't do this, I'm not enough. Your brain is going to reinforce that thought. It's going to bring that back up to your memory when you think about stepping out of your comfort zone, because that is the belief that you've been consistently rehearsing in your mind, in your heart. Yep. This is why I love Proverbs 4:23, because it says this. It says, "Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flows the issues of life." Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flows the issues of life. It says this because whatever gets in our heart, that's what we consistently think about, meditate, contemplate on, and those things that inevitably impact our life. But get this, if we are reinforcing our minds with the reality that we have what it takes, that we have something to offer, that there are people that are dependent on my gifts and talents, if we're consistently rehearsing those things and internalizing those words, those pictures and images into our brain, what happens is that when we face new opportunities, we are more readily able to accept them because they are in alignment with what we already believe about ourselves. Man, I am preaching tonight. You guys may have to send me a love offer or something. The brother is on it. I know I'm telling the truth. So before one of the gifts I want to say insert right here of I believe COVID-19 is that it has offered us this ability to stop and to reflect on what it is we will believe about ourselves, what it is that we are planning to do with our future, what it is that we need to reevaluate. Because for some of us, what has happened is we've been so busy outdoing that we haven't had enough time for reflection that allowed us to really deal with what was really going on inside of us. And this is the reality, is that we all have these voices speaking to us every day. I don't know if you realize this, but the most important person that you talk to every day is yourself. The most important person you talk to every day is yourself. So this COVID time has been a great opportunity for us to reevaluate and shift our perspective about who we are, about our perspective. And the reason that I decided to talk about family of origin tonight as an entry point is because it is, in my experience as a counselor and working with, a good majority of clients, I rarely ever see any client that is not living out a story currently that is not connected to how they were raised in their family of origin. And so you may be thinking tonight, man, well, I've had a really good childhood, really good experience. And that may be the case. And so you may have a harder time accessing some of what you believe about certain things and how your life is operating. So what I want to do as a way to help you kind of think about what your experiences have been in your family of origin and even up until now, is to throw out some subjects that I want you to think about. The first one is success. What is it that you believe about success? What is it that you believe that you need to have in order to be successful? Yep. And after you document what you believe about that, ask yourself, where did I get that belief from? Where did I get that belief from? Yep. And this is going to really start to get to how you were raised, because those are things that were formed very early before you even really had a chance to critically reason and think about what your definition of success was. What is your definition of failure? Man, this is a big one. What is it what is your definition for failure, and what is your response to failure? What does failure mean to you? What does failure mean to you? That's going to be really important to ask. And then again, after you put down what you believe about failure, what it means to you, ask yourself, well, where did I get those beliefs from? Because they came from somewhere. They came from somewhere. They came from somewhere. That's good, baby. Yep. No failure. Yep. Yep. And she's not the only one. She's not the only one. We all to some of for some of us, failure was not an option. It was not an option. And so we interpret our life experiences through that lens of failure is not an option. And what I want to say specifically for that is that, failure, there I define uh, I define failure as when we do not take any amount of insight, wisdom from an experience. When we fail to take any insight, experience from any insight from an experience that we've just had, that's what I really consider a failure. John Maxwell has a book called Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn. Because really, no failure is a failure if you learn something from that experience, unless you try. This is why I love Thomas Edison. People will say that he failed, but he just tried a whole bunch of times until he actually discovered something that was of significant impact. And we're living in his reality today because he didn't stop, because he didn't discover what he needed to. Money. What is it that you believe about money? This is a big one. Some of you guys right now already have a perception about money that is not true, and that is not going to set you up for success. So I work with people who grew up around people, and all they heard was that couple things: money doesn't grow on trees. You guys have probably heard that one too. Have you guys ever heard? Yeah. That money don't grow on trees, or that we've all heard this, and I think this gets misinterpreted, is that the love of money is the root of all evil. Yep, I know you've heard it. Be honest with me. The love of money is the root of all evil. Or perhaps if you make a certain amount of money, then you're not going to be generous, or you're going to be at risk for falling or failing, or you're going to become corrupt. And so if these are your beliefs about money, what that does is that sets you at a cap for how much you're able to make. And so, for instance, you get to $100,000 and you start self-sabotaging yourself because you're making this money, but the operating system that you've been operating on, that's coming from your childhood, is that if I make too much money, I'm not going to be good. And so you self-sabotage yourself because you have that idea of money going on in your head. Or work hard, play hard. That's a good one, babe. Work hard, play hard. Is that in order for you to play hard, you have to work hard. And so this causes you to work an excessive amount of hours because you feel the only way that you can enjoy your life is that you have to work an excessive amount of hours. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true. Give you the last two ones, and then I'm gonna let you guys go. Is conflict. What is it that you believe about conflict? Me and my wife have been having conversations about conflict for the last 10 years, and I'm not gonna let y'all in my business, but this is one of the ones that I've had to always reassess is conflict. What did you learn about conflict? What do you believe about it? Is it good? Is it bad? How do you do it? Got to think about where you got these beliefs from about conflict. And then lastly, I think a really important one for us to consider is, excuse me, Shanga said, work harder, not smarter. Thank you, brother. Want to give credit to who credit is due. Is vulnerability and emotion. This is, I think, probably the crux and really most important one, if you will, is that what is it that you believe about emotions? where you're able to share them, where you're able to express them, where you're able to be vulnerable. Man, I know some people are jacked up right now because they never had the experience of being able to express their emotion and to be vulnerable. And then just to really take it there in some of our households, um, emotional vulnerability just wasn't acceptable. And if you got an attitude, that wasn't gonna go down good. Now I don't believe in getting attitude, being disrespectful, but I do believe um, expressing your emotion is really important. And that when you don't express your emotions, you know what I'm about to say. It's one of my favorite statements that unprocessed emotions don't die, they just leak into other areas of our life. Unprocessed emotions don't die, they just leak into other areas of our life. Man, that's good, Lex. We may have heard this one. This, I think, can be damaging, very severely damaging, is that bury them and keep it pushing. Bury them and keep it pushing. Because sometimes, emotions can get in the way. Emotions can get in the way of our goals. Emotions can get in the way of our, if you think that emotions can get in the way of your goals, you're going to suffocate them. And sometimes you like, I'm going to deal with that later. I'm going to deal with that later. Because no one likes to have the experience of always feeling like they're emotional. And what I want to say to that is that, our emotions are really data. There's no such thing as positive or negative emotions. Emotions, they don't have a positive or negative connotation. They're just emotions. They're just data. They are a signal to us to let us know that there's something going on inside of us that we care about, or something in us that is out of alignment. And so our emotions are signaling to us that, hey, something's something's going on. And we need to ask ourselves why we're feeling that emotion, to uncover what it is, the thought that we're thinking that's impacting our emotions. All right, man. I have enjoyed this conversation. I went over that more than I wanted to. But what I want you guys to think about are these questions. And again, don't hesitate to set up an appointment with me. Don't, if you listen to this, even by replay, I don't care if it's a year from now. If you need help processing this, let's have a conversation. You don't have to do this alone. This is what I'm here for you to schedule an appointment and talk with me so we can work through some of these beliefs and help you unwind and unwire them so that you can get yourself on a path that's going to help you actually reach your goals, accomplish your dreams, and live out your life to the fullest. And not only live out your life to the fullest, but live into the most authentic version of who God has already created you to be. I'm going to leave you with this reality, and that is everything that God has called you to do, everything that you have been called to do on this earth, every place that you've been called to impact, every person that you've been called to impact, everything that you need to have that impact is already with you. It came with you prepackaged. But what happened is over a period of time, you put on these layers of beliefs, ideas, through your experiences that made you think that you don't have what it takes. But I'm here to show you the truth that everything that you need to accomplish and succeed, you already have. It's just a matter of getting rid of that other excess stuff that keeps you from stepping out and stepping more fully into who God has called you to be. So, two things: schedule your appointment with me, schedule a discovery call. Go to jamesperkins.help, click on Talk with James, schedule your appointment. And then, two, as we always encourage you, or excuse me, like to share with you, is our wellness gift for Wellness Wednesdays. So if you want to visit jamesperkins.help /wellness gift, we have a gift there for you. 5 days to your best you. It's a great course, completely and no cost to you, worth $300, $200. but it's our gift to you for attending our broadcast on tonight. All right. This has been an incredible episode. I look forward to you joining us on next week. But until then, peace.